Welcome to all our participants to our panel discussion on retirement and social protection. I am tonight's moderator, Ian Daniel, Program Dean for the Labor Studies Department. This week, the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Study commemorates Labor Day 2023 by hosting a series of activities between June 27th and the 30th under the theme Commemorating the Legacy of Labor. 3 sessions have been hosted thus far by 𝗟𝗯𝗪𝗂𝗏𝗂𝗏 Institute for Research and Debate. On Tuesday, we had a really lusty discussion on the review of the labor law in Trinidad and Tobago. On Wednesday, we had a regional panel discussion discussing strengthening collective agreements. And tonight, we'll be having a discussion on, as we said earlier, retirement and social protection. I'd like to invite participants to ask the panel any questions on the presentations, and you can do so by typing your questions into the chat box. Now, when you do that, please be as clear and as concise as possible and identify the panel member to which your question is directed. And please like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now, the members of our panel tonight, whom you can see on screen, are Mr. Cecil Paul, who is the Executive Officer of the National Workers Union, and Mr. Alva Allen, who is a lecturer in the Labor Studies Department at the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies. So let me begin by introducing the gentlemen in a little detail. Let's start with Mr. Cecil Paul. Cecil Paul was the Chief Labor Relations Officer at OWTU for 10 years and represented workers in the Ministry of Labor, the Industrial Court, and in bilateral dispute settlements. He was also the General Secretary at the Council of Progressive Trade Unions and Deputy General Secretary at the National Trade Union Center of Trinidad and Tobago. Cecil has worked at British Petroleum, now known as BP, and he worked there until he retired. Mr. Paul was a member of the Council of the World Federation of Trade Unions and is currently Executive Officer at the National Workers Union. Mr. Alva Allen, who might be known to many of you, was Director, Education, Research and Training at National Union of Government and Federated Workers, Assistant General Secretary at National Workers Union, and former Education and Research Coordinator at Banking, Insurance and General Workers Union. He was also an industrial relations practitioner who has represented OWTU and NUGFW in open court, as well as negotiated collective agreements with TNTech, NP, Lever Brothers, Food Etc., WASA, NHA, Carib, Berger Paints, and the Chief Personnel Officer, the CPO. Alva has been all over. Mr. Allen has represented NATUC in government's Vision 2020 Subcommittee on Labor Relations and Social Security, which is one of the main reasons he's here, and NUGFW in a cabinet-appointed committee looking into long-term arrangements for WASA. He has also served as a member of the Board of Directors at MTS, Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies, Legal Aid, an advisory authority, and at the National Insurance Board in the capacity of chairman and deputy chairman, another reason that he's here tonight. Mr. Allen is a past student of the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies and is presently a member of the academic staff in the Labor Studies Department. Mr. Allen celebrates 51 years as a trade unionist this month. Thank you to both panelists for being here with us tonight. Now, tonight's discussion is actually a continuation of training sessions that have been carried on by the college and 𝗟𝗯𝗪𝗂𝗏 over the last couple years, where we have been looking at managing pension funds with several organizations and several trade unions. This discussion represents our attempt to broaden the topic to the national and regional levels by looking at the pension system as a part of social protection. And we're looking at that in the important context of several factors being in flux at the present time. One of the things that we've learned about over recent years is our aging populations in the Caribbean. We've recently undergone several disruptions, one most notably being the COVID-19 pandemic. The Millennium Development Goals focus on social protection a great deal, and we're also seeing high levels of youth unemployment and vulnerable populations in our societies. And all of these are exacerbated by the impact of climate change and all of the weather events that we are experiencing that serve to further disrupt our economic systems. So in the context of all of these things, we want to talk about our pension systems as a major part of our social protection systems in the Caribbean, which is criticized as not being where it needs to be. And so with that, I'd like to invite our panelists to give an opening statement. We'll start with Mr. Paul, and then we'll have Mr. Allen on the topic of pensions and social protection. Mr. Paul.
Yeah, well, Social Security, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Social Security is a major economic issue for middle and lower income people, particularly the pension element of Social Security, which could determine, how you spend your retirement and how you deal with the responsibilities of mining grandchildren, because that is the reality. A lot of us see about our grandchildren through our pensions. So pension is a major issue. And as a Social Security, it provides a range of benefits that are necessary for a reasonable standard of living. However, there are other elements of Social Security, right, which otherwise cannot pay for these benefits. Some workers who do not have pension plans are doomed to the NIS pension. There are other benefits where people get Social Security. You have a problem with your rent and so on, or your mortgage. You go to Social Security Department and they may help you, as well as they may reject you. These benefits have aged, and we need to look at them in terms of how we could best reform them. Now, I'm not criticizing our Social Security system in the sense that it is not good. It is good. And in terms of other countries, I can tell you, we have a wider range of Social Security benefits, and we have a reasonably good pension system, but only for employed workers. And that is the danger. The NIS system is good as a supplement because a pensioner can get both the NIS and they can get the occupational pension. But the NIS pension needs some sort of improvement because some people only get NIS. They don't get the occupational pension. So Social Security determines a lot of the living standards of people during their retirement age, right? And some of them who do not know the system sometimes end up with a miserable life of poverty in their old age and so on, because you have to know the system. So I think we need to reform quite a lot of them. Like for instance, the workmen's compensation and the cost of living allowance is also a social benefit to deal with inflation, right? Then we have other social benefits like healthcare and so on. That is very important, because there's a difference in going to a private medical institution and going to the hospital. We have to improve that. That is a major social security element of particularly old age when people get sick, right? So I think we need to look at social security, and as a progressive country, right? Even Alva was telling me that Butler raised all those issues, and we have seen the fruits of Butler's agitation and so on. But we in this age need to keep going and improving these benefits, because they play a major role in the lives of our people. So I'll just start with those major elements, and then we can go into some of the other elements individually.
Thank you, Cecil. Alva.
Alva, we're not hearing you.
Alva, you're muted. There you go.
Right, I'll start again. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Ian and team, thank you very much for the invitation to speak at this afternoon's panel discussion. I think it is very timely that we look at this question of retirement and social security protection. But I want to begin by looking at the theme of the Labor Day series that we are hosting for this year, which is commemorating the legacy of labor. What is this legacy that we are being asked to commemorate? And how is that related to the topic of the day, which is retirement and social security protection? Well, if we go back to 1937, you would see that it is very much related to what is happening today and the discussions that we are about to engage in. Because in 1937, one of the demands that was made by Butler, by the Home Rule Party, that we had fought for, was for old age pension. At that time, we were a colony of Britain and British citizens. And the argument that we had advanced in that period was that we can't be discriminated against. If we are British citizens, we have to be treated as British citizens and not as second-class citizens. Because citizens in Britain were automatically entitled to an old age pension when they reach age 65. That is what they were entitled to. And our people back then were demanding the same level of treatment. So the old age pension that we have today, the old age pension that we have had from since then to now, 1939 to now, is a direct product of our struggles in 1937, led by Butler. Old age pension came about as a result of that. In fact, the ordinance was passed in 1939, giving us the right to qualify for an old age pension. It was extremely low. I think it was about $6 a month. But nevertheless, it would have meant something. It was the start of things to come. And while it might have been at a very low level, look at where it is today, $3,000 a month, right? It only came about not because some government gave us that. Our grandparents and great-grandparents fought for that. That was their perspective. That's the future society that they wanted to see, that they had begun to build, where senior citizens would be able to take care of themselves. They could live a proper standard of living. That was the perspective that they had. And that is how social security came into being, because we fought for that and won it. It wasn't something that was handed down to us by any government. That is not so. In fact, listeners should know that a lot of blood was shed in this country for that, 15 people were killed in those riots in 1937. The most amount of people who were killed were in Rio Clara, about 5 or 6 of them. And they recently commemorated the martyrs of Rio Clara. I think it was last week, Saturday, Bridget Samuel spoke at the memorial for them. That was one of the things that we had achieved. That is the legacy of organized labor that they gave to us. That's the legacy. And that has everything to do with what we are about to discuss. The social protection, social security that we have today, a lot of it came from what we fought for in 1937. For example, Ian might not recall. I don't know if he was around at that time, he was born then, but I certainly recall, and Cecil would recall. When we were going to primary school, we used to get a bottle of milk to drink. You know where that came from? 1937. Lloyd Braffett, in his book, the Butler Riots of 1937, one of the contributors to that book, Lloyd Braffett, made the point that Butler was saying that children of Britain, school children of Britain, were getting 1 bottle of milk every day. They were getting free books, free school uniforms. Those were the things that we fought for. That is how we got it today. Since then, that was part of the social security that we had put in place from since then to now. And the reason why all of that is all the more important today is because those are the things that are at risk. Those are the things that they are coming to take. That is why we have to take a deep look at our pension system, our social security system. That attack on social security didn't begin today or yesterday. I remember vividly the very first assault that was launched under this guy Ken Valley was when they harmonized NIS pension and old age pension back in 2007.
Yeah.
And as a result of that harmonization, a lot of pensioners, they bawled. My mother was one of them. They cried because of the reduction in pension income that they got when the NIS income was harmonized with the old age pension. People got old age pension without any reference to income from NIS. And then in order to continue to get old age pension, they harmonized it. So they took that into account. If you get an NIS, then you will get less old age pension. And that is how it started. The first assault against the standard of living of retired persons. And that assault is going to be continued. In fact, I know I'm speaking beyond my first 5 minutes, Ian, but forgive me. The proposal now, right now as we speak, before the Parliament, contained in the annual reports of the NIB, tabled in Parliament, is to reduce the NIS pension by 6% for each year of early retirement before the age of 65. So if you retire at age 60, the proposal is to cut your NIS pension by 30%. And all of this is coming at a time when we have been under the most vicious series of attacks for the last 20 years. So now they're coming at our social security benefits, just as they have done in other parts of the world. And it is for us now to hold on to that legacy that we have inherited from our great-grandparents and build on it rather than let them take it from us. So I want to posit that as an opening statement. Thank you very much, Ian.
Thank you very much, Alva. Gentlemen, both of you raised some interesting points. I want to go at a point that Cecil was alluding to, that there's a difference between the salaried person and the non-salaried person where pension benefits relate. And so I want to ask you all to explain to us what type of pension systems are there and what type do we operate in Trinidad and Tobago?
Yeah. Well, the major pension system that pays the highest is the occupational pension. That is to say, I work, for instance, I work in the oil industry. Alva worked in TNTech. We will pay probably 5%, and the company will pay 10%. And when you reach retirement, or if you want early retirement, you get a reasonable amount of money. So that's the occupational pension. Then they have the NIS pension, which you as an occupational pensioner will also get because you contribute to that. So you'll get the NIS pension. Then it have the senior citizens grant, also known as the old age pension, which Alva is explaining there, that they are trying to reduce if you're getting NIS, right? So those are the type of pensions we have in the country, right? So that what is absent though is self-employed people cannot, they're not entitled, or they do not benefit from occupational pension, even though they work, they are self-employed. And at one point in time, we were trying to get the NIS people. They don't get they don't get NIS also, right? The self-employed don't get NIS, right? All they will get is the senior citizens grant. We were trying to get the government to let them voluntarily join the NIS, but I don't think that was very successful. It's either they were not interested, or the National Insurance Board didn't push it enough, right? So those are the type of pensions that you ask about. I don't know if I missed out anything else.
Well, I just want to develop on the point that you were making about the self-employed. What I do know is that several studies were done by the National Insurance Board over a period of years. It's not now that this matter is being considered. And the recommendations were always made to bring the self-employed into the NIS system so that on retirement, having reached a certain age, they can enjoy an NIS pension and as well qualify for certain NIS benefits like injury benefits and so on. The problem was for the government, from the last statement I heard from Minister 𝗟𝗪𝗧, if I can remember rightly, it was too costly to bring them in to the system. And that is why they were never brought in, because they would have to fund or give them sufficient credits to qualify them for pension.
Yeah.
Right? And the government's funding of that was what 𝗟𝗪𝗧 described as too costly. Whether that it was in fact so or not, I didn't look into that. But I mean, after all, you don't have to pay all the costs one time. You could, over a period of time, as has been done in so many other pensions, when you have to pay for back service credit, incrementally contribute to it and eventually reduce the cost of it. So I couldn't see that as being a plausible reason for continue to have them excluded from enjoying NIS benefits. But the type of pension benefits that Cecil had spoken about that we have in Trinidad and Tobago, well, they fall under three different brackets. One is the defined benefit plan, the other is the defined contribution plan, and then you have the hybrid, where you have a defined contribution, but in some cases, like in the Express newspaper group, they wouldn't give you a pension less than a fixed amount, right? So you have a hybrid between the two.
I think we better explain that a little in some more detail, Alva.
Oh boy.
No, all right. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
No. Well, I take the point. The defined benefit plan, the majority of pension plans were like that, where they defined what the benefit would be. It was based on a formula of an accrual rate,
age and
the number of years of service, and your salary. Right, so the Board of Inland Revenue had some draft regulations limiting that to no more than 2/3 of final salary. But the defined benefit really was able to give workers a promised amount of money at the end of their working life, and that was guaranteed for life. And if the plan didn't, no, this is a big point, if the plan didn't have sufficient assets to cover that liability, the employer would meet the liability. Now, take, for example, what happened with Cipriani Limited. That pension plan went to the bus. When Cipriani Limited had closed down, and government had agreed to meet all the liabilities of it so that people could get their pension. Well, that is what the defined benefit plan was all about. The defined contribution plan, which is the big thing that is big debate that is taking place universally, because that is where employers want to go. They want to get themselves out of having to meet that liability in the event that the plan closes, right? They want to move from defined benefit to defined contribution. In defined contribution, all that you are defining is the contribution. You are not defining the benefit. The employer will pay,
plus interest. Yeah.
Right? The employer will pay, the worker will contribute, whatever interest the money earned, that will buy an annuity, full stop. Whatever the benefit is, nobody knows. But it always happens, right, that when you compare the defined contribution plan benefit to the defined benefit, it's chalk and cheese. Defined benefits were far superior to defined contributions. In fact, this engaged the attention of the industrial court some time ago in a particular case. I don't want to talk about that right now, but the example was that here in one particular company, after 25 years service, a worker on retirement was getting just a little under $2,000 a month as a pension, a senior supervisor in the company. And that company operated a defined contribution plan. After 25 years and a salary of over $15,000 a month, all you would get is $2,000 a month. Had she contributed to a defined benefit plan, she would have gotten at least $8,000 as a monthly pension. That was the difference between the two.
Well, we're lucky we have the defined benefit. We're lucky. Well, because, you know, it's 2%, you have 20 years service with a company. That is 40% of your last salary, right? And plus interest and so on. And you have the option to take a quarter of the money. That's all, Alva. You can take a quarter of the money.
Yes.
As cash. Like, for instance, you want to clear off a debt or you want to pay off your mortgage. That's why I take my 25% and pay off my mortgage. And I could rest good in the night. I have no mortgage again. And the rest I get a reduced pension, you know. So that is the kind of benefit the trade unions fought for, and now those benefits are being reversed. And it's a sad thing, you know. Because the trade union movement weak, we get weak. And they're taking advantage of us. I mean, look at the current government offer to public servants and other public workers. I mean, 1%, 4% over 6 years and all kind of thing. Look at the cost of living, you know. So,
but Cecil, but you're making a point there, Cecil, where the benefits that have been fought for by the trade unions, you know, are under attack. And while well, there are two questions that comes to mind. What is the nature of the attack, and why are the plans under attack? That's on the one hand, but on the other hand, in Latin America and the Caribbean as a whole, now when we go down the road that you were talking about the salaried workers and the non-salaried workers, there has always been a gap in coverage. In that while some people have good plans, a lot of people aren't covered or aren't adequately covered at all with whatever pension benefits they receive, if they receive.
Yeah. So, and that is sad. That is sad. Particularly the what we call the non-unionized workers, right? In the service industries and so on. Is very sad with them. You know, that is very bad. Very, very bad. And you know, the employers got to realize at a certain point in time that the trade unions were so powerful that we were forcing them to improve benefits and so on, under pressure, because the trade union was united. But now we separate. I mean, we formed the National Trade Union Center, and it mashed up in a few months, right? As a matter of fact, it mashed up the very day they tried to unite it, it mashed up, So the question of trade union unity, and some firm proposals and so on could raise the standard of living of both the organized workers and the minimum wage workers, who could move from minimum wage and be represented by trade unions and so on, right? And that is what makes Britain strong, the workers in Britain strong. And then they attack them. They lick up the mine workers union, Cargill and them. They lick up a set of unions in Britain, and the trade unions in Britain now struggling. They're struggling, The battle between the employer and the trade unions is an ongoing battle for hundreds of years, and it going up and down, right? And less workers being organized now, which is a sad thing, which is very sad.
Alva, any comment?
Well, I can tell you that quite a number of employers have already taken the initiative to try to move their pension plans away from defined benefit to defined contribution. Mm-hmm. I know of one case where the employer bypassed the union, went directly to the workers and tell the workers from now on, transferring everything into a defined contribution plan, end of story. And they do it. Right? In another case, when the TNTEC pension plan was experiencing some financial problems, right, I saw a correspondence in which TNTEC asked the actuary to consider how do we move from defined benefit to defined contribution as an alternative. And that could only happen. That could only happen. I spoke to one of the union officers at TNTEC, and you know what he was telling me? That he was informed that is a matter of governmental policy.
My God.
That's the direction in which the state wants to go. Let me develop on it a little more. Allow me a minute or two more. The defined contribution plan started as part of the neoliberal agenda in Chile when the dictator Augusto Pinochet came to power and moved from defined benefit to defined contribution. Now, when 𝗟𝗯 was Minister of Finance, I had the good fortune of leading the unions team in NUGFW, right, to negotiate a pension plan on behalf of the related workers. And 𝗟𝗯 told us, in no uncertain terms, gentlemen, we want to introduce a defined contribution plan. And this is going to be the pilot project. So we looked at what the proposal was. And fortunately, I know one or two people around like Clary Bennett. I went to Clary and said, Clary, if we give you the plan to operate based on these parameters, what are we going to get? Clary said, give me a few weeks. And then he wrote us back and said, well, the value of what you all are going to get is very close to old age pension. At that time, it was about 600.
My God.
No, tell me this thing. Yeah. But that is what the defined contribution plan was coming down to. So here, workers are being asked to contribute to a pension, right? A defined contribution pension plan. And the value of it was about $600, which was the same as old age pension, which they were getting free in any case. They didn't have to contribute to that. So what was the value to the workers? And on top of that, all the back service would have been lost.
And 𝗟𝗯𝗃𝗂𝗏 was an insurance man, you know. That is his background. Yeah.
And Selwyn John made it quite clear to the chief personnel officer after he gave him and presented all the results. We did ask CLICO to give us a quote under the defined contribution plan, what would the workers get? And it came out of basically the same thing that Unitrust was telling us, right? And Selwyn John, who, well, he's deceased now, he was President General of the Union, made it quite clear to the chief personnel officer, you see this experiment, that all they want to think,
not on me, not on my union.
We ain't going that way, period. Right? So, for quite some time, the government has been trying to move forward with defined contribution, and not just the government alone, you know, but employers themselves, wherever they have pension plans. If you look at new pension plans being established, all of them are defined contribution plans.
But Alva, why? Is it simply an effort to escape liability in case something goes wrong with your open market, investments? I mean,
it is more than that, Ian. It is more than that. In simple terms, it's all about the transfer of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't put the wealth into the pockets of the workers. Well, where else would it go?
Mm-hmm.
To the 1%.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the government's philosophy, you know. You make the rich richer. Imagine I on behalf of Bank and Insurance and Travel Workers Union, I had to go and negotiate a pension plan for Newsday workers. And the proposal that was put to us for defined contribution plan, right? The proposal that was put to us by one of the insurance companies was less than what the workers were getting in severance pay.
My God.
So all that extra money was to go to who? Not to the workers, you know, but back to the employers. That is the transfer of wealth. That is the neoliberal agenda.
So is the problem then that we're talking about pensions in relation to workers and not in relation to citizens? Are we looking at it at a relationship level that is too low? You know, because what is the benefit of a pension system? Is it about, well, you've worked and therefore you've paid, or is it about assuring a universal system of lack of poverty in old age? Are we talking about the rights of a citizen, but we're using the language of worker instead? And is that the mistake that we're making?
Well, Alva spoke about Butler, and Butler having the vision to tell them, look, we are British citizens too, and we want what all they have in Britain, because Britain had one of the best social security systems in the world, right? And that was because they had a history, of strong unions that will shut down the country in a day, right? All areas of the country, and they were able to extract those benefits. But the question of old age. Now, I have a good pension. Alva have a good pension. What Butler do and what the trade unions, the OWTU and the TNTech workers and the oil workers did, they gave us a good pension, right? But the person 20 years younger than me, in serious trouble, they would have, as Alva say, a contribution type pension, right? Where the employer will pay less into that pension plan, right? The employee pays the same, but at the end of the day, the employee gets a smaller pension. So the employer don't have the liability to that worker who worked with him for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, right? Then go out and get the NIS. Go and take your NIS and the small pension, the pension you're getting, and call that George, right?
Well, Ian, I like the question that you raised about whether we're talking or limiting pension to just worker at the workplace or universal and applying it across the board to citizens. to me, the underlying principle there is ensuring that whether it is at the workplace or across the board as citizens, ensuring that the retirement income, the total retirement income, is sufficient enough to give our retired citizens a decent quality of life. And $3,000 a month can't cut it. It doesn't. In fact,
but you can't pay rent to that.
well, wait, let me finish. The consultants have advocated that $3,000 a month right now is too much.
Jesus.
They said that in the report, that the minimum pension should be no more than 80% of the minimum wage. So whether it is a worker or a citizen, average citizen, right? Because people who qualify under the senior citizens pension, some of them may not have worked in their lives, but they get that. The underlying issue there, to me, is that whatever the sums are, it has to be able to afford our retired citizens a decent quality of life.
Alva, it sounded to me that the argument wasn't, well, the math of the argument could have just as easily been raise minimum wage, you know, rather than cut pension. And so it speaks to me about what is the goal of the pension system in the country, in the region. You know, what are we trying to do?
You see, the pension system is controlled by some big insurance companies, aligned to insurance companies in Britain and the United States and so on. Big time insurance companies, they connected, interconnection, right? And they controlling a lot of the pension plans, right? And the actuaries just come to Trinidad. A lot of them just come, Alva could tell you, a lot of them just come here. They come and do their work and so on, and they advise companies here, you know. And they are fighting a battle with the trade unions and pensions. Their view is that the trade unions have demanded and extracted too high a pension from these insurance companies, because they control the pensions, the insurance companies, and that's the battle. But they're behind the scene, and they frighten the trade unions, and they're behind the scene. The company in front, and in some cases the government in front, and in some cases the local insurance company in front. I forget what they call, where they tie up the money, the investments and so on. I forget the term they use. Reinsurance and all kind of things they do. Reinsurance and so on. Right?
So how do we get out from behind this 8 ball? One of our participants is asking, are there innovative approaches or best practices in social protection that can be adopted to improve retirement outcomes for individuals? I mean, surely there are examples around the world of better retirement systems than the ones that we operate, the ones that assure better outcomes, ones that are universal and are about rights and not about grants. Where should we be looking, Alva, Cecil?
We don't have to look far. All that we have to do is to look at what our leaders did for themselves. What did the government do for itself? In 2016, on the eve of Labor Day, the Minister of Finance went to Parliament with an amendment to improve the pensions for government ministers, members of Parliament, judges, and so on. And you know what the amendments were? Well, the Prime Minister will get his full salary as a pension for life. So whatever the salary is, that is his pension. But that isn't all. They will add on to the salary certain allowances, like housing and so on, certain fixed allowances, and they're getting that as part of the calculation for pension for life. And that isn't all. You know what they do? Every time the Prime Minister's salary goes up, the pensioner prime minister, his pension also going up. So now the country had to pay for 2 pensioners, and you want to know what else we could do to improve pensions? Look the example right there. Look the example right there. Because no matter what you do with a pension, it comes down to reduced income from salary. And there isn't like in very, 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 very few pension plans provisions to meet inflation. For example, in the TNTEC pension plan, there's a provision for cost of living allowance, right? It used to be based on the index of retail prices. The pensioners would get a cost of living allowance that is indexed to the retail prices. So whenever inflation goes up, that allowance would also go up. But now it's capped at $500 a month, right? I know of no other pension plan in the country today that offers that. Some plans have an automatic, very, very few, an automatic escalator, and that would give an increase in pension of maybe 1%.
Yeah, every 2 years or so.
Yeah, but it is capped, right, at that level. So you can look at all those different factors for meeting the increased cost of living and so on. Other pension plans, like WASA, for example, I remember when I negotiated improvements in the WASA pension plan. That was about 20-something years, more than 23 years ago. Back in 2000, we got WASA to agree, right, to when the pensioner dies, out of the fund, a sum equal to 6 months pension, which wouldn't have anything to do with the workers' pension, but a sum that would be paid to the funeral agency to assist in offsetting the cost of funerals. No other pension plan makes provisions for that, right? Only the national insurance give you a funeral grant that is paid directly to the funeral agency. And that is only about $5,000. That can really beginning to scratch the cost of funeral these days.
Funeral is $60,000, I'm thinking now, boy.
So
funeral is not only debt, grieving for debt, you know, it's grieving for expenditure too. It's double grieving there.
So we're raising the very real question of how do you pay for a pension? How do we pay for a pension in a way that makes the pension sustainable? Because everybody seems the attack on the pension is that it can't be done. It's not sustainable. It's transferring too much wealth. How do we do it in a way that assures the income for the citizen, but in a way that is also sustainable?
It have some guys called actuaries, right? Very bright fellas and things. Some of them very, fair and so on. But some of them are the brains behind all these proposals, right? And their objective is do not interfere with the level of profits that the company receives every financial year, because some of the profits being cut down due to the liability to pay into the pension plan for the employees. That is the issue. I will probably know several other reasons.
Well, pensions have to be paid for. And obviously, the greater part of the burden has to rest with those who can afford more, the most. And clearly, that is on the side of the employer and the state, right? The least part of it has to be with the worker. In some countries, the expenditure, the ratio is not 2 to 1, and it's more than that. The employers pay more, right? In TNTEC pension plan, for example, the contribution rate is over 20%, about 20-something percent. TNTEC paying on a rate of 2 to 1, about 15% of that. Right? So the benefit, of course, it will cost more. It will increase the cost of it. but it has to be funded. It has to be funded. Just like how you cater for all other increases in everything else, you have to also cater for that. You can't use for a solution to the problem a reduction in people's benefit. That is not going to cut it. You're asking for a revolt. So
Well, I remember mentioning to you all recently, Alva, that I heard an American actuary say that there is no problem with paying for pensions. It's just making the decision to pay the cost.
Mm-hmm.
And I am glad that you hit on that point and reminded me. They decided not to pay.
Mm-hmm.
That is the issue. The actuaries told the government in the NIS report to increase the amount that is being paid, right? I think it was about 1 or 2% more. And what did INBUD do in 2016? Nothing. They came after and tell them to increase it again. They carried it up to 16%. And what did Mr. INBUD do? Nothing. And that amount of money that was supposed to be paid into NIS, where did it go? It stayed in the pockets of those who have, and didn't go to the pockets of those who have not. And therein lies the crux of the problem. That is why I said it's all about the transfer of wealth.
As George Weeks used to say, there's a permanent class struggle between the owners of capital and the people who produce capital, the workers and the employers. George Weeks always used to say that battle is continuous. It doesn't stop at all. And
So,
if we fall asleep, we will get liquor.
Now, I want to add another dimension to the discussion about how to pay and how we go about paying this. And that's by looking at the structure of the local and regional labor market and asking if this is not a contributor to the difficulties of pensions. Again, coming back to what Cecil has been saying from the very beginning, the self-employed worker who very often is actually a worker in the informal sector, the people who are informally employed. These are citizens who are impacted by the same dynamics of aging, the same dynamics of a need for income. How do we overcome the fact that our labor market is not one that supports a high level of employment? We have, despite what the statistics show, we have high levels of youth unemployment. We have high levels of unemployment in general, high levels of informality in our economies. Is this inhibiting our ability to develop and sustain pension plans? Or let me not say pension plan, because that pension plan idea takes it back to employer-worker. Pension systems.
Yeah. Or social security or age. Aging. Yeah.
I am glad that you raised that, right? About the nature of the labor market, right? And the sustainability of pensions. They are in fact creating the problems. Let us examine any state enterprise or public utility. You know what they do? Instead of hiring permanent workers, what do? They hire contract workers, temporary workers, fixed term contract, and they don't contribute to the pension plan.
Yeah, they don't contribute, yeah.
So when the pension plan is starved of those funds, what do you expect to happen? You must end up with a problem where the plan have enough money, it will make, but you caused that in the first place. Because the plan was premised on people going and other people coming in to replace them. And the people who would replace them would be permanent workers. But instead of being replaced, they're not being replaced at all.
They hire temporary workers.
Less and less workers contributing to it. They created the problem. Look at what happened to NIS. If you look at the drop in the number of contributors, active contributors to NIS over the last 4 or 5 years or so. I think it went down by about 100,000, according to the stats. Don't hit me too hard if I get the figure wrong. But you look at the cut from Petrochem, when Petrochem was closed down, over 7,000 people, right? And from the estimate, it was about $324 million lost in revenue as a result of that. So when you go about restructuring the economy and restructuring the enterprise and sending home workers by the troves, look how much went home in TSTT. What do you expect to happen to the pension system? It must end up with a problem of funding. You created that. And then you want us to pay by telling us, well, if we retire at age 60, we ain't gonna get a pension. Well, the pension we go get had to be cut by 30%. You're mad out. They have to be. They created that problem. They have to solve it. They must contribute what they ought to be contributing and not place that burden on the backs of workers.
Well, there need to be a national study or a national conference or discussion on the failing pension plans and how it will affect workers when they reach 60 and 65 and ready to leave the workplace. You know, that is a serious thing. You know, because all they would be entitled to would be a small pension and the NIS, right?
Mm-hmm. You see,
and fellas retiring with mortgage, you know, it have a lot of people retiring and they have mortgage to pay.
Mm-hmm. You see, the welfare and well-being of working people is not the priority of the government. And I'm not saying whether it's red or the color yellow. It doesn't matter to me. The statistics doesn't say that at all. Mm-hmm. If you look at the central bank data center website, go on that, and you look at the figures produced in terms of the amount of money spent on salaries and wages goes as a proportion of total expenditure, that tells you the whole story in detail. In the year 2001, salaries are counted for about 32% of total expenditure. You know how much it are accounting for now?
About 20%.
17%. Less than 17%.
Oh God. So it gone below 20.
Yes. Because our well-being, our quality of life, our standard of living is not their priority. Less and less money is being spent. And they can't say that they have, you know. At a time when the government earned the most amount of revenue ever, $57 billion, they never had that kind of money before. You know how much salaries and wages accounted for? 16%. 16%. When they had the most amount of money they ever had. So if we are not a priority as workers, how do you expect them to treat us as retirees? And that is why I'm saying that, yes, all these things that were fought for back in 1937 and won, we have to protect them because they're coming at us.
So one of our participants here is may actually be correct when they're asking if there's a connection between the attack on pensions and the structural adjustment programs that started back in the 80s.
Absolutely so. Because that is when the whole concept of neoliberalism was introduced and implemented by Reagan and Thatcher.
Yeah, they were the
architects. That is when structural adjustment really began to be implemented. In fact, we didn't get it till around 1987 when the NAR came into office and they implemented these structural adjustment policies from the International Monetary Fund. And they began to privatize, they cut salaries by 10%, take away the COLA, and you know the rest. All of that is part of the ongoing attack. It's a continuum, really. And that is go ahead.
Oh, you see, this is why I keep coming back to the question. Is talking about pensions in relation to workers and salaries, as opposed to talking about it as a right of the citizen, the linchpin of our problem. Because, I mean, it's for as long as I can remember, there have always been discussions on issues of portability, of workers moving from one place to the other and being able to move their pension benefits from one place to the other. It seems to me that the idea of portability is even larger now. Looking at the moving from one type of worker to another type of worker, and then adapting to the possibility of unemployment being an issue in the life of the worker. How do we change the discussion so that we break the logjam of this battle between the trade union and the employer? I don't know if that made any kind of sense at all, Alva.
I think you need to break it down a little more.
All right. So if you isolate the pension issue to one between the employer and the employee, what we've already recognized is that a lot of people aren't in that relationship. All right. So you're inevitably taking a partial view of the situation. When you look at the labor market, you see our labor markets are so volatile, especially with the disruptions that we're experiencing today, that it's not just a matter of are you permanent or contract. You know, there's so many combinations of work relationships involved, including formal and informal, and including the possibility of being unemployed for long periods of time, COVID, for instance. Doesn't it mean that the whole idea of a pension system has to be rethought with larger parameters now, where it is a public-private partnership where the plan in a company must interact or intersect with what the state is doing, so that you can adapt to the situations that are being experienced at any given time?
Well, that needs a national discussion, right? If we have to look at a universal pension system across the board for everybody, as opposed to the different tiers of pension arrangements that we have in Trinidad today, right? Because you're going to end up having to deal with very complex issues that you cannot escape. You have to deal with collective bargaining arrangements. How are you going to address that, right? Because those things are like statutory instruments, you know. And you must also look at the question of other parts of the labor force, right? Like teachers, prison officers,
police,
and so on, and their types of arrangements. Because what I know has been promoted in government quarters is that they must have a fully contributory pension plan. That is what they want to do. So the entire issue of what type of pension arrangements should we have, I think that really needs a thorough national discussion on it from all quarters, all parties affected. What we would be like to see, and that is, you see, what and them had done in 1937. They looked at their own situation and they formulated a plan. They formulated a demand that these are the things that we want. We want old age pension, we want workmen's compensation, we want this, that, and so on. We want the right to vote, etc.
And they had something called poor relief or some kind of thing. So
yes, these are the things that they were calling for. Well, in like manner, the conversation has to be very wide to involve all those who will be affected, including the self-employed. How are we going to bring them in, and how are we going to, because they will reach a stage where they will not be able to work any longer, and they too have the universal right to a proper quality of life. That is a universal right for everybody to have a decent standard of living. There's no discussion on that. That is part of the UN Charter of Rights. All right, so how do we achieve that? I think that is what we need to have discussions on.
You can remember about 30 years ago, 𝗟𝗯𝗃𝗂𝗪 had 𝗟𝗟𝗃𝗃 had sent out a paper on pension reform to full discussion among trade unions and employers and so on. And it never came, they never had any meeting. I don't know who shut it down. I don't know if you can remember that. 𝗟𝗯𝗃 was then Minister of Finance.
Well, the pension reform that he wanted was he defined
the same thing.
System,
the same thing.
right?
You forget
And,
people might have
brought in quite a number of foreign experts to talk to us about that.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So what should we be proposing, gentlemen? We're on the side of the working people. What are the ideas and innovations that we should be putting out there? Because you all are right. Who could live on $3,000? Especially with the rates of inflation that we're seeing, where the price of gas has gone up by over 100%, and electricity is soon to go up, and water rates soon to go up. Who can live on $3,000? So what should we, the people who represent those who will be faced with that challenge, what should we be proposing to fix the system?
Well, Butler had a term before Alva. I just want that short thing. Alva. Butler had a term. He used to call it what, brute force. Butler used to say we have to use brute force. If they can't hear, they have to feel, right? Now Butler was a kind of bad on trade unionist, but very intelligent, right? Very, very intelligent. And people used to figure Butler kind of stupid and all kind of thing. Butler's father was a headmaster. You know? Butler was well educated. You know, it's just that he had this kind of, rough, and open kind of way. So it's brute force. Yeah, you have to get them to the table and let them know that you cannot do working people that. When somebody retire and they go home, they have to mind not only themselves, but they have to mind their grandchildren. They have to mind some of them still have to pay rent. Cost of living going up, food. Children eating now. Man, your mother used to give you a piece of bake and some tea with some saltfish in it and thing. No, man, breakfast and dinner and thing is a big thing. Children eating better. And you see that they're getting taller and everything. Because we didn't eat all these nutritious food and so on in the hard days. So you had to feed your children properly, you had to pay rent, So we had to confront them.
Alva.
Oh, yes. I think that a starting point would be an agreed position on what is going to be a living pension that a family of 4 can live on, right? And looking at all the other sources of income upon retirement, the difference between that and those other forms of retirement income, if it can't meet that level, well, then the state has to supplement it so that the retiree can live a proper quality of life. And, just some very, very quick maths. I don't know if you have a calculator at hand, you could assist. A family of 4, if they use a basic meal of doubles, husband eat 2 doubles, wife eat 2 doubles, the other 2 children, one eats like 6 doubles for breakfast, 6 for lunch, and 6 in the evening. That's 6 trees are 18 by $6 for one. That's how much? $108
or something
per day. By 30 days in a month, it's how much? $3,240 a month. Look at what the minimum pension is, $3,000.
So your pension money could go in double.
A pensioner. Well, we talk about a chubby or a little boy to drink, or bottled water. But that is the reality. So in order to really make the pension meaningful, let us define, right, what is a livable pension and the differences between all the other sources of retirement income. Let the state supplement that.
So adopt a scientific approach.
Yes. And over a period of time, there should be a national commission to review it, to make sure that it remains relevant. And if you just add the cost of one bottle of water by 6 people by 30 days in a month, I'll show the total that and doubles going to be over $5,000 a month. And $5,000 a month is just around what they're proposing as a minimum wage at $30 an hour. And that is only doubles on water. And that ain't making sense. So let us really get the grips with the issue of what is the quality of life that we feel that all our resources can afford its citizens. Because that is what Butler was talking about. What the resources of the country. In fact, he was talking about nationalizing the oil industry too, you know. Yeah. In order to use the resources from that so that citizens could enjoy a decent standard of living. Because that is our objective. Regardless
of how are we getting this on the agenda? I mean, you guys have been saying it. Petrotrin gone. You know, 2/3 at TSCT gone with more workers, you know, on the line. You're looking all over the
big manufacturing gone too. Lever Brothers, all those gone.
Organized labor is suffering all over the place. I mean, Tutor just failed their agency shop order election, their vote. How, given where we are now in relation to membership, how do we get this on the agenda so that it is taken as seriously as the Prime Minister's pension?
Cecil, you go first.
I think Alva point is well taken. We need to determine what is a living wage, sell it to the trade union leaders and the workers. Now, we have a thing in the trade unions. They just talk to the leaders and the leaders just decide. Go to the workers and let the workers tell you whether they agree or not and how they're going to fight it. They will tell you. No? Ask Alva about our experience with workers and struggles and so on. It's the workers used to tell me what to do, you know. We used to tell them what is the situation. And they used to argue, because sometimes they cuss me, right? And or they too soft, or they getting soft and all kind of thing. And they tell you what to do because it's they doing it, right? And let us go to the workers in the country and let them tell us what to do. Talk to them, tell them what the options are, and so on.
But are we doing that, Cecil? Are we talking to the workers of the country? I mean, when a young man can sit in the auditorium at Cipriani and ask me, you know, from the back of the auditorium, if union's dead, you know, I mean, are we talking to the workers of the country so that whether they are members of a union or not, they recognize their interests as workers and could get on board with something like this?
When the parliament took away COLA, we went on a set of meetings and so on, right? And one of the meetings was in House of the People on Charlotte Street. And a tall red man from Wassa, always remember that. He stand up and he say, here now, you see what's going on here? All you talk with the government and the minister and so on ain't going nowhere, you know. All you had to go in every single workplace where the unions organize. If all you had to take 2-3 weeks, who had to come in the morning, who had to come lunchtime, who had to come in the evening after work. And we went on that program. And that is what lick up Alva. That is what lick up the proposal to take away workers' COLA and all kinds of things. When the NR came in power. Alva. Right? The workers tell us what to do.
Well, I'm agreeing with Cecil on that point because that is what our living and lived experiences has taught us, right? That is what we have learned from. Without the participation of the people, we can't go anywhere. So we have to develop mechanisms that would allow for the people to participate in this process, and they will make the decision of what it is they want to fight for and when. And the discussion today is a part of that process. It has to continue. Other groups have to take it on and so on, but more and more the debate has to go on throughout the length and breadth of the country. And people have to be involved in it. It is their fight, and only they can fight it.
And some of them are afraid to go to the workers because they feel the workers go, when they're driving with the big time canting, they figure the workers go question. The workers don't care about that, you know. The workers don't care about big canting they buy, you know. The workers care about their own business. And use the leader, you could drive your big car all you want, but deliver. What we tell you to do, we have a strategy here, we have a program, you have to carry it out. Don't come here with your big car and drive away and we ain't see you for 3 months again. 3 months after we ain't see you. Workers don't vex if the leader buy a motor car, a fancy car and all kind of thing. If he have 20 women, they don't care about that. That's the business. And they just tell you that, you know. They just tell you that. They say that's all the business. You just deliver. I have a wife and 5 children living up to Macaque in Laventille. And we want to put down a big tank. And the big tank costs $5,000 and a pump and so on for me to get water up to Macaque. So, and I increase. When I get increase, I go pay for that. Just tell you straight.
But Alva, is pensions, the state of pension in part a reflection of how trapped we've become, especially in collective bargaining? I mean, that we so focus on the pay increase that we're not looking at the other things that need to be covered. Because if it's one thing, you know, everybody getting old. I wake up this morning and find out that Madonna's first song is 40 years old, and I was a young adult when
she came. I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. I saw that.
You know, so if there's one thing, you know, retirement and old age coming for all of us, why is that not more of a focus in our employment relations and industrial relations?
Let me answer that very important question with a story. And Cipriani, I want to thank Cipriani for giving me that opportunity to be part of that story. So one day, the college decided to host a seminar on pensions. And they invited your humble servant to be the facilitator. Well, I had prepared a long and lengthy speech, and when I went to the podium, I said, look, I ain't going to make no speech again, you know. I took up the marker and I pointed to one of the trade union leaders. I said, you come, hold this. Go on the whiteboard and calculate your pension for me. Ian, the answer was, I need to have 100 more seminars like that. That tells you why the issue of improving pensions has not been on the front burner, because very few have the skills and expertise to articulate those issues along the bargaining table. Now, I am not
that's after we organize endless seminars on pensions.
I am not trying to be anybody here.
They ain't coming in.
It's not their fault that they didn't know, because people didn't teach them.
Yeah.
That was the problem. People didn't teach them. You know when last public servants' pension was improved? When Rennie and them was in office. Gosh, Rennie.
Yeah.
Right? They fought and carried up public servants' pension to where it is in terms of that formula. And since then, you ask the ordinary line officer in the union to calculate, they don't know, because nobody has trained them to do it.
Yeah, but we saw the Prime Minister's pension. We saw the politician's pension. How did that not trigger a response
from them?
Out of us to take care of ourselves?
Well, I think it has to do somewhat with politics. What the Prime Minister's pension by law became when Imbut had moved that motion, right? Just about 2 years prior to that, when UNC was in the government, they brought forward a similar motion to increase pensions by the same amount. And the trade union movement opened them out and said, well, you can't do that, you know. And they put a stop to it. On this occasion, I don't know what happened. They didn't do anything, right? There was no such trigger. And the kind of reaction one would have expected, it didn't take place, right? So a lot of awareness has to be built at all levels of the trade union movement so that people could be sensitized as to the need to improve on those issues. And there's quite a lot of improvement that can be made. Look, for example, we're talking about social protection as part of this thing. Cecil can tell you that one of the things that the 𝑭𝑹𝑬𝑬 was through Sylvester Ramko, one of my mentors, previous, he's deceased now, he was able to get Tiantec to agree to utilize pension funds to finance housing loans for workers, and workers were able to build, buy, put a roof over the head.
What we call that the social wage policy.
Social wage policy. And it went over to NP and Trinma and so on, where they were able to do those things. But those are skills that you don't find existing in the movement right now.
Instead of the pension plan lending money to make interest to some company or some investor, the pension plan lends to its members to build housing, to build a house. Right? And that was a winner.
So you see, the college has a major responsibility for training in that regard. It has to do that because nobody else is doing it. They have to be able to train the union people at various levels, all levels, from top to bottom, right? And these kinds of issues, as well as things like improving medical plans. You know, talking about that as part of the social security mechanism, right? Group medical plans. A lot of people, when they retire, right, as part of their benefit package, they would continue to have membership in the medical plan. But some of them stop it. Some of the employers carried up to age 65 in Tiandec examples until the day they're dead. Right? So those are things that you can be used to ensure that the quality of life of the retired person can be enhanced. Teaching people how to negotiate those things.
Yeah.
And how to improve the benefits. Because the benefits that are offered to retirees are reduced to when they compare them to when they were active employees and active workers. They're not the same level. They get less, but they had to pay more.
That was a master plan, the social wage policy, a master plan that died.
So there's a wide range of things that can be done in order to deal with the issues of pension. A lot of improvements that can be made. And again, the college has to take some kind of responsibility to help develop. I know the college can't do everything, but...
Well, I'm glad you're saying that, Alva, because kind of like the college on this screen right now is you and me. So you've just set part of the curriculum review agenda for the next academic year. But no, I agree with you. This is about what we have to do to bring these issues to the fore, not just for organized labor, but for all workers. And I mean, it means that as I have pointed out on several occasions, the term radical literally means going back to the root. People feel being radical is going forward in a crazy direction, when in many instances, radical is going backwards and looking at what was done that was cutting edge in the past. Maybe we need to go back at some of these things that you and look at some of these things that you all were party to in the past, and see how we can adopt them and adapt them to the conditions that we're facing now. You know,
but you all are take the social wage policy file out of the 𝑭𝑹𝑬𝑬, or we didn't take it?
I don't have it.
Oh, neither me. We had to find that, boy. That, I mean, we could remember some, but it was a comprehensive document that was praised by most trade union leaders, but they never implemented it because we had a explosion in the union at that time. You know, they attack Alva, they attack me, they expel me, they expel Ramka, they sidetrack him. War in the union. That's when George Weeks leave now.
Yeah.
George Weeks leave and people became insecure. They say, oh God, them bright boys go take over the union. But we wasn't on that. All of us had good jobs and was working in the union for less money than we had in our substantive job.
Yeah.
We were just politically, well, we had a political objective to advance working class people, right? We were chauvinists. We were working class chauvinists. We wanted to see working class people articulate, you know, could argue politics, could argue economics and so on, and could win matters in the court.
Yeah.
Well, I those documents.
Yeah, we should, and I think that this is the objective of this of a discussion like this, where it's about how do we get social protection on the front burner, on the agenda for all of the working class, and it does seem like we have a lot of going back to the blackboard to do. To try to figure out a lot of this stuff. Well, I'm not seeing any new questions coming from the participants, but this has been a rather interesting discussion, at least between the three of us. So I want to give you guys the opportunity to close, make a closing statement for the participants who are still with us. Cecil, we start with you again.
Yeah, I think this is a very important discussion, the question of social security, because that is the base of the trade union movement here. Social security for workers, right? And, you know, the question of pensions, the question of workmen's compensation, the question of injury compensation, because I know workers who got injured and their life became miserable. Some of them even attempted suicide or all kind of thing. You can't get up, you can't walk, you're getting a little small injury compensation, and they tell you when they reach 60, you go get your pension and all kind of thing, right? So the question of cost of living allowance, you know, that is a major issue. The question of pension plans, the question of healthcare, right? Healthcare is a major social security issue, right? The companies cutting back on providing healthcare through a health plan and so on. They're cutting off on that. They prefer to send you to the government hospital and so on, right? So all those things we have to preserve, right? And make sure that we bring some dignity to the workers, right? And that the workers does love the company, you know. It's a strange thing, workers just love the company and feel attached to the company, right? And the company need to do the same. The company needs to love the workers because the workers make the profits, you know. The workers love the company, but the company need to love the workers. And if you love your workers, you will provide decent benefits. Nobody want the workers don't want the company to give them benefits to bust the company, you know. Give them what is fair and what can be afforded, right? And you get the best workers, right?
Thank you, Cecil. Alva.
Short, simple, and to the point. We have only just begun. I think that the college is really playing a very good role in opening up debates on important issues like these. It needs to develop it more and continue it, because there is that lack of focused discussion in all other quarters of the society. And this is one area where we can focus and go beyond just discussion, but try to put forward solutions to the problems. And that is where we need to go more. So therefore, the dialogue has to continue. It shouldn't end there. I want to make a call to all those who have participated in today's discussions to consider what we have said. The purpose of it was to commemorate the legacy of organized labor. Your foreparents, your great-grandparents, they made that sacrifice for us to have the things that we have today, including the 8-hour workday. In those days, people used to work 9 hours a day. And by the end of the first week or second week after the insurrection started, the Governor General proclaimed the 8-hour workday. And he gave everybody a 16 cents increase, from 56 cents a day to 72 cents a day. Let us remember what our foreparents have fought for and what we have benefited from today. Let us praise them and honor them. But most importantly, these debates give us an opportunity to reflect on the kind of future that we want to have. What is the future of work that we would like to see? What is the kind of society that we want to build? What should it be like? This is where the discussions assume that all-embracing importance. So don't let it end here, but take the discussions out to your colleagues at work, at home, all over the village, all over the community. Let's begin to talk for a better Trinidad and Tobago, for a better quality of life, which is what we all would like to see. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alva. And while I'm not old enough to remember the 70 cents a day, I am old enough to remember Holiday by Madonna. That's about as far as I go. So I'd like to thank you, the panel members, for being here with us and for having such a good conversation. I enjoyed it immensely. I think we must do it again. We must continue it, and we must look for more panelists who will come and give equal contribution to what we discuss here today. I want to thank the 𝗟𝗯𝗪 Institute for Research and Debate for the work that they've done for this week. I want to thank the college for commemorating Labor Day this week, and for constantly supporting the idea, the importance of dignity for working people, and the importance of the organization of labor. And I want to remind the participants here with us today to please complete the feedback form on the session. You can find the link in the description box in the chat. And please, everyone, look out for a special release tomorrow on Friday on our social media pages that continues our theme of legacy. And what you will be seeing is a series of short extracts from a feature that is going to be produced by the college that will feature former Prime Minister Mr. Basdeo Panday. Thank you all for being with us tonight. I hope you enjoyed tonight's session as much as I did. And I look forward to seeing you all in future discussions as we continue to take on the issue of social protection in a larger and deeper manner. Have a good night, everyone.
Same here.
Same. Have a good night.
We can go now.